Right, welcome back. For those who are still at the back, please do make your way forward and find yourself a seat as we start the last part of day one of this year's summit. So our next session will be an interview with Benjamin Quinlan, CEO, Managing Partner of Quinlan & Associates, on the topic of MiFID II, competitive implications and practical implementation challenges. He will be interviewed by Nathan Lynch, who is sitting on the right corner, Head Regulatory Analyst of Australia and New Zealand from Thomson Reuters, and Ben is sitting in the left corner. So over to you guys.
Thanks very much, Dean. It's a real privilege to be here today to discuss this fairly thorny topic with all of you who are kind enough to still be here. MiFID II sounds like a fairly European-centric reform, but as we'll hear today, it's going to have a sweeping implication for the Asia-Pacific region in the brokerage industry. So ESMA, the European Securities Markets Authority, takes the view that under the current research payment model, where costs for research are absorbed within brokerage fees, research can essentially be an inducement to trade. So this in turn gives rise to a potential conflict. As a result, the MiFID II reforms will require brokerage houses to unbundle or charge separately for the complementary services of investment advice, research and execution. So as you can probably anticipate, this will have huge consequences for the structure of brokerage firms. The business model of producing research will change, and it could pose significant challenges for the quality of research. And as Ben and I will discuss today, that could be a good or a bad thing. So according to Ben's analysis, he expects that these reforms are going to trigger a global decline in research spending of 25 to 30%. So if you think about the impact that's going to have on the industry, on your friends who might work in research roles, don't alarm them, but it's significant change that's coming down the track. So what will these European-led reforms do to the buy side and the sell side of firms in the APAC region? To unbundle these questions, we're very fortunate to have Ben here today. Ben's the Chief Executive of the financial services consultancy Quinlan & Associates. So Ben holds a Bachelor of Laws in Economics from Macquarie in Australia. He's born in Hong Kong, educated in Australia, picked up his excellent and diplomatic accent in Australia, and he now works back here in Hong Kong. He's also been the head of strategy for Deutsche Bank's equity business in the Asia Pacific and also for the investment bank in Greater China. So Ben, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Nathan.
So in this Q&A session, essentially we'll discuss the future of research and what research houses and firms in general can do to prepare to ensure that they prosper in the post-January 2018 world. So if we could just start, if everyone could pick up their iPads just to start this and get a general sense of how the room views this issue. The first word cloud, if we can get that up. So let's just ask everyone here, what word best describes your expectations about the outlook for research in an unbundled world? If you don't feel like you're an expert in this space, don't worry, don't hesitate. Just give some ideas and hopefully by the end of the session today, it'll be a lot clearer. Transparent, independent. Ben, do you want to sort of comment on these as they come in?
Expensive. Good.
Confused.
We'll hopefully unravel that.
A lot of confusion.
A lot of confusion.
I assume that's
I agree.
within the industry, not within the analysts themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. Independent. So independent's a huge one. That's a positive take on this. Expensive maybe is problematic. But just to start, do you want to sort of give us your sense of how you see the room's response here?
I think a lot of the points that people are putting up are very valid. And I think we'll discuss some of them on stage as we run through the questions that Nathan's going to ask. It is a thorny topic. It is a tricky topic. There are a lot of unknowns, but we feel just based on our interaction with both buy and sell side around this space, we do have a pretty good grasp on where the industry is going to go and what challenges it's going to face going forward.
So you've read MiFID II in all its glory, page by page.
Oh, every page, every day, yeah.
For the benefit of those in the room who haven't spent the time doing that, can you just give us an overview of the impact that it's going to have in relation to unbundling of research?
Sure. So for those of you who don't know what the MiFID II regulations are, it's just summed up as simple as this. Traditionally, if you wanted to acquire research, a buy-side firm would pay a brokerage house a commission, and that commission would factor in the cost of advisory and execution. And advisory is the sales and research component, and execution. So that commission basically covered all of it. Under the new MiFID II regulations, effectively the research component needs to be split out, and it must be charged separately. So there are two ways that the buy side can now pay for this. The regulator has been quite clear that you either need to pay out of your own OPEX, your own cash flow, your own P&L, or you can continue to use client funds, which has been the case in the past, but it must be subject to what's called a research payment account. And that's quite a heavily audited process with a lot of requirements that you need to meet around setting budgets, around audit trails, proving the quality of research. So there's effectively two mechanisms that you can use to acquire research going forward out of Europe.
So Europe's not traditionally known as being a jurisdiction that's heavily extraterritorial in the regulations that it passes, unlike, say, some other Northern Hemisphere jurisdictions. This sounds like a European phenomenon. Can you share with us how this is actually going to transfer over? Will it be as a direct result of regulation or just a sort of a striving for international best practice?
Yep. Basically, two ways it is going to transfer beyond European borders. Firstly, if you look at big buy-side institutions, our engagement with them paints a very clear picture that to the greatest extent possible, they do not want to run a bifurcated payment model for research, which means using CSAs in one location, bundled commissions in another location, and fully unbundled independent research payments out of Europe. So to the extent they can, they want to, for operational simplicity, standardize this globally. And of course, it won't be absolutely global in nature, but that's the effort moving that way. The other side is, I guess, for non-international firms, this is regional funds, there's naturally just going to be an evolution towards best practice. I think if funds in Europe can demonstrate to their end clients how much they're spending on research, how that funding is being used, why it's being used, how it's contributing to an investment process, there's going to be a natural evolution of expectations around the world that this is best practice, and the funds, therefore, in Asia-Pac and around the rest of the world should be able to follow suit.
So in view of all that, Ben, do you sort of expect that these changes will have a significant impact on the competitive landscape, both for execution and for research?
Yep, absolutely. I think when it comes to competitive landscape, I don't know how familiar all of you are with how research is basically produced and disseminated at the moment, but our view is that there is probably just a bit too much duplication out there and redundancy in content. A lot of firms are continually getting 50, 60 of the same brokerage reports about exactly the same stock, about exactly the same earnings update. As a result of that, there's two things that we basically see. One is, this is on the sell side, we see a narrowing of waterfront coverage. A lot of sell-side firms offer all sector, all country coverage, but a lot of their teams are not strongly ranked. You might have analysts in some sectors or countries that are ranked 30th or 40th in the street, and we'll find, the view is it's going to be very hard to monetize that content, and I think the buy side are going to be very reluctant, now they have to pay out of their own pockets for it, to actually pay for that. So we definitely see a change. We also see proliferation of independent research houses. The barriers to setting up an independent research house are very low. You just need to be a star analyst or a good analyst in the sector you cover with good content knowledge. And the overheads that you need to sustain the production of that content are extremely low, unlike a full-service bank where allocated costs feed into a research department many times over. So we basically see narrowing of waterfront for the big houses. Tier 2 non-differentiated research is going to be pushed out. I think you've seen firms like Standard Chartered, Barclays. I mean, I'm not saying these are Tier 2 houses. I'm saying that The equities is a very, business is a very competitive business, and in order to sustain that kind of a platform, you need to be a strong ranked provider, because the cost base of running a research for a Barclays versus a Goldman is pretty much the same. A research analyst is a research analyst. It's expensive.
Yeah. So let's throw it open to the room now, just to get some views. If we can bring up the first question and see what the room thinks of this. So let's ask everyone, what do you anticipate will happen to the quality of research in an unbundled world? So this is essentially asking, is it going to get better, worse, or indifferent? 1, quality is likely to improve as research houses compete to sell their services directly. 2, quality and diversity of analysis is likely to decline as rationalisation takes place across the market, the process you've sort of described, Ben. 3, the quality of research is likely to remain fundamentally the same. 4, it's too uncertain to say what the impact will be at this stage, as the word cloud indicated. And 5, I just want my brokerage fees to go down. We all share research in this industry anyway. So if we can start the timer on that. As someone that works for a publisher, I genuinely hope that the answer's not 5, but we'll see. Well, 5 did pick up 16%, there you go. Mm-hmm. Ben and I were debating this earlier about whether the unbundling of research would potentially lead to more plagiarism in the industry, so that's an interesting one. But essentially, it's split. What do you make of that, Ben?
I'm going to back number 1, because that's our view, but I'll share that with you. Yeah.
It's fascinating, though, isn't it? It's fairly evenly split between,
I guess it shows
polar extremes.
I guess the lack of consensus, or I guess full knowledge and transparency around what this is actually going to mean for the market, and there are still a lot of differing views out there.
Yeah. Okay, so what can firms and research houses and brokers do to ensure that they're number 1, not number 2, that they do prosper in this new environment?
Well, I mean, it goes back to the point I was mentioning before around being a bit more selective in terms of where you want to play. Being a full-service waterfront provider is all well and good if you can actually monetize the content, but the correlation, especially when you look at how brokerage houses are paid for their research relative to where they are ranked, is actually extremely high. And we've gone through data before and looked at this in great detail and seen that banks that are among the top 3 to 5 players tend to be the ones that actually make a profit out of research, because they get the greatest share of allocations and wallet. Whereas everyone else is not really standing to receive that same kind of benefit. So.
It would appear to support scale. I mean, as you've said before, the costs of an analyst are fixed, whether they're employed by a global multinational bank or a boutique firm. When charging happens, it would appear to support firms that can spread that cost across more clients. Is that a reality?
Yeah, it is. But overall, I think it goes down to the point we mentioned around this selectivity around participation choices, what that means for how they can differentiate the areas that they play in. Obviously, stick to your key strengths around it's not just the content, but it's also around the service offering tied to it. So maybe you're a firm that's renowned for particular expertise on one sector or two or three odd countries, but maybe you're also renowned for your strength in the corporate access space. Maybe you're also renowned for how your research benefits access to primary deal flow, and how it supports an ECM business or an M&A business. So I think banks have to think holistically around where are these areas of strength, and then that's obviously looking at where you want to play, but then there's an issue around content. What does your content need to look like? Does it need to be more punchy, more to the point? How do you get that messaging across nice and quick? Traditional method of distributing research in the past is attaching a PDF to an email and blasting it out to clients. Is that the most intuitive way to do it now? And we think not, because a lot of banks are investing in their online platforms and distribution of research to make it more intuitive, more engaging, more insightful, and more personalized for those who are sourcing it.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting question that's come in from the room here, if we can bring that one up for discussion. And it asks, it's from Anonymous, have any Asian regulators made any inroads on unbundling in anticipation of MiFID II? What's your sense in the consulting work that you do?
Not as much, no. And I think some of the regulators here that we've spoken to actually have a different view on whether it's a good thing or not. I don't think I want to go into too much details around the conversations that we've had with a few of them, but some of them actually have quite a different view to what's going on in Europe. without a doubt, and they feel that it's going to fundamentally affect the availability of content in the market, and they're not really supportive of where Europe is going with it. Mm-hmm. I understand some of the points around that, but.
In your recent report, which got quite a lot of publicity, it was an excellent report, you pointed out that you're predicting a decline in global research spending of 25 to 30% by 2020. Mm-hmm. That decline sounds like a fairly existential moment for a lot of research houses. Can you share with us, your metrics around that and what that scale of impact will actually mean?
Yeah, sure. I mean, overall, if you're looking at, I think the key issue that's unknown in this space right now is around pricing and negotiating. What is the value of research at this point? A lot of the buy-side firms, there's a standoff between buy-side and sell-side still. Buy-side's asking the sell-side, how much are you going to charge? Sell-side's asking how much you're willing to pay. There's a feeling of no real first-mover advantage in this area. Overall, I mean, we're looking specifically at the way that this wallet is going to evolve. The buy side, they're going to have a fixed budget regardless. They're just going to end up with a set amount of how much they feel they're comfortable with spending on research. And they'll obviously need to take into account what they ultimately charge clients and what that means for their underlying economics. With the sell side, most of the time, research has been run as a cost center. So now when you need to run it as a profit center, you need to then look at your cost base and then say, if we are to make a profit, we have X cost and we need to add a margin on, this is what we should charge for research. I can assure you right now that that approach is not yielding any results that the buy side agrees with, because the cost base right now, especially with the larger banks, to provide that research is extremely high. And the haircuts we're seeing on the negotiation process is anywhere 40, 60% to what's being quoted. So that's why we predict such a heavy hit to the global research spend that the buy side is actually willing to allocate to content.
Yeah. I mean, do you think there might be some sort of skullduggery around the types of institutions that produce this research are very good at, financial structuring and all the rest of it? Is it possible that some of these costs will be transfer priced out to keep these research houses having low costs and therefore research is priced low? For instance, when you assess the cost of running your research business, do you factor in computers, rent, HR, legal, all the rest of it?
Yeah, but I mean, this is a really complicated topic, and I think all of you, if you've ever come across bank MIS, the key issue around cost is never the cost within the business, it's the allocated cost within a bank. A lot of the time, your business line, your direct costs may only make up 30% of the cost base. So, the negotiation process and the politicking to work out what is really ascribed to your cost center is extremely difficult to get to a consensus view. Yeah.
Well, let's ask the room at the moment. If we can bring up our second question, this is an interesting one. So, I'm assuming there's some people on the buy side out there. Will you be happy to pay for quality research in an unbundled world? And if you're not on the buy side, I guess you can think about this as an individual trader. Number one, absolutely, research is invaluable to buy-side businesses and should be priced accordingly. I welcome the removal of any perceived conflicts. Number two, no, I think firms will be reluctant to pay these costs. It makes more sense to allow the price of research to be hidden within brokerage fees. Three, paying for unbundled research is a necessary evil. It's an inevitable and overdue change. Four, we'll pay it begrudgingly, but my brokerage fees had better go down. So let's start the clock on that one. Okay, so it's pretty evenly split. So there's quite a few people that want to see brokerage fees go down to offset what's happening. 22% seem to think it's a positive. 30, is it 29.5%?
It's very evenly split.
Yeah. Is that what you would expect when you sort of do a poll of 600 or so experts in the space?
Yeah, I think there's elements of everything, especially when we speak with our clients. Yes, they value research, but yes, there needs to be a more reasonable price on it. Yes, it's a necessary evil. We can't just in-house everything as some firms are doing. We still need an external sounding board and point of view. So all of these resonate. I'm not surprised at the answer.
Mm-hmm. We've got some great questions coming in, so let's go to the iPad now. If I can just bring up a question. So is there anything stopping buy-side firms from paying for research and then passing ultimately that cost to end clients via higher management fees? Is that the intent of the regulation, effectively, to pay for the research and then pass on the cost in a transparent structure?
Well, it depends on how that firm wants to actually manage their research cost. There's nothing stopping them from doing it. That's subject to their own strategy. But the buy-side firms out there are not in any position right now to be jacking up the costs of their funds. You're seeing a lot more consolidation in the industry because the pressure right now is, especially as assets move from more active to passive management, is fee pressure is immense. So I think, again, this is not about your spending on research and passing it on to end customers. Our view is there is going to be a rationalization of spend on research such that they wear that cost, but they're more mindful about the allocation to something that I think right now there is just too much content out there, so they need to be more targeted in the way they spend and allocate their budget.
So in a sense that can create efficiency because you're stripping out duplicative research, you're rationalising it down to a point where people think it's worth paying for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've seen disruption in many markets from sort of online publishing to Uber. Is this, in a sense, part of the disruption that we're going to see, a digital disruption in this space where rather than PDFs being mailed out, you'll have online platforms with value-added services? Do you see a sort of potentially an explosion of quality and better service provision in this space?
Absolutely. And I think what you're seeing, especially out of Europe and actually some firms, not even within Europe, is the development of these online marketplaces. If I say firms like Research Pool, Smart Karma, Alphametry, I mean, these are some companies that are effectively developing platforms for the sell side to put their research online and the buy side to search intuitively on these platforms for what they demand the most in terms of content. Smart analytics, smart search engines, and the ability for anyone to effectively come on and post their research. And I think these online marketplaces aren't just acting as an effective distribution and search mechanism to actually find the content that you want, because right now you're being thrown the content. So it allows a buy side to search it. But the other thing that they will help do is establish two things. One is the price discovery process. It's going to become more transparent, generally, how much research reports cost. Is that a fair price? I mean, are you going to price based on how many pages it is, or price based on how impactful, who's writing it? But that transparency will definitely increase. The other side of it is, how does that research add to the value of your investment process, which is, I guess, what are the metrics that you're determining this is really adding value to you? Is it accurate? Is it an analyst that has a lot of likes and following? Is it a contrarian, insightful piece? And I think this is where the regulator still remains a little bit silent. What is, especially in the context of an RPA, one of the ways you can pay for research going forward? What does it mean is one of the provisions for research to actually be adding value to your investment process? How do you articulate that it is? And I think these online marketplaces will help with defining what that means in terms of the analytics and KPIs they create for the firms that use them.
So in a sense, interpreting what you're saying, the bundling of research has possibly acted as a disincentive to innovate because it was seen as part of a sales strategy. It would work better for the broker to hand documents on personally and forward them via email. When you move into an unbundled world, which is about service provision, it's really all about offering all of these new innovative ways to share content. Is that going to be sort of one of the side benefits, in effect, of what's really designed to make research unconflicted and transparent will potentially lead to this whole innovation in this area?
Absolutely. No, I mean, there's not much more I need to say on that, except I completely agree. Yeah.
So that's your glass half full sort of outlook on this issue.
Yeah. I mean, there is a benefit in our view to content. I mean, if you want to monetize research now, Are people going to pay for the same maintenance research? Are they going to pay for exactly the same thing they've seen before? I think if the funds need to open up their wallets and actually think about the economics of what they need to pay for that was traditionally given for free, then they will be looking for the best content out there. They will be looking for thematic ideas, things that can influence their trading. Yeah, fundamentally, I think it's going to be a big plus for the way that content develops in years to come.
Okay. Just before Dean gets his shepherd's crook out and drags us off stage, I just wanted to ask one last question, which is critical. The European Commission has been kind enough to postpone the introduction by a year, so it's now January 2018, which is good news for everyone. What's your sense of the preparedness for these massive structural changes in the industry? In Asia and Europe.
Not very good. In Europe, much more than Asia. I think in Asia there is a recognition around it, but again, it's waiting for Europe. And I think this buy-side, sell-side standoff is creating a lot of delays around who makes first move to actually implement something. And we feel, I mean, we've met with a lot of the banks. A lot of them, in our view, are very far behind in terms of where they actually really need to be. You're looking at a situation, even if I go back to one point, pricing. How much do you charge for research? And again, it's the point that I mentioned earlier in this discussion, that a lot of the sell side are looking at their cost base, then inferring based on that, if we were to make a profit from this and we add a margin, this is technically what we should be charging our clients. But that process is not yielding the results they want because they're continually taking haircuts on the clients they're going out to. Now, if you get to a point where you keep doing that and you hit 2018, effectively your whole research platform could be underwater because you price something based on your existing cost base and the target of revenues that you've wanted to get to sustain that is not there. So the whole platform is now underwater and therefore has the ability to remove this concept of inducement gone? No, it's still there. As a whole, you have an inducing business, you know? Yeah. It's running at a loss and technically a regulator could argue it's being subsidized, you know? So the idea is, this is why it's so important to look at this now around pricing strategy, the economics, the cost base that goes into it, because come 2018, you need to be ready and you need to show that you are maintaining a profitable, sustainable platform, targeting the right areas and delivering value to your end clients. So.
And with all regulation, it not only represents a change and a challenge, it also represents a commercial opportunity. So could you please join me in thanking Ben for coming here today and sharing his expertise in this area?
Thank you.